Hi, thanks for joining us on Live with Squacky. I'm Val Kelly, voice actress, owner, president, CEO, and executive producer of Mid-Atlantic Voiceover, LLC. We're so excited to have professional voice actor and podcast host Mike Lenz joining us today. Mike and I are actually from the same town in New York State, and it's called Saratoga Springs, and talk about a small world. So thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Great to be here, Val, and everybody should know that you were up visiting me like about a week ago and about a week and a half ago, and we had coffee at Mrs. London's in downtown Saratoga Springs. So it was so awesome to see you, and we actually got to meet for the first time and hang out together. I loved it.
Yeah, it was really cool to meet you in person after all of this time of talking to you. So that was really awesome.
I know.
Yeah, cool. So tell us how you got started in the voiceover industry. Like, did you always know it was something that you wanted to do, or did you figure it out later in your life?
Well, I mean, it was kind of, excuse me, it was kind of a little bit of both. You know, I've always, all my life, I can remember being interested in movies and acting, but honestly, all through high school, I was playing sports, never joined the drama club, never did any theater, nothing like that. But it was always in the back of my mind. And I've kind of had a varied career, and people that know me on my website that I've, for the last almost 30 years, have owned a small brick and mortar business. And it's a compounding pharmacy that's been in my family for about a generation and a half. But even while owning that, I was doing other things. So I served in politics for 10 years. I was a finance commissioner in my hometown and actually served as mayor of Saratoga Springs. And that was a great experience. But about 13 years ago, I got out of politics and I suddenly had a lot of free time on my hands. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And it allowed my creative juices to start flowing. And one of the things I became interested in was screenwriting. And I joined a local filmmakers group. And at one of those sessions, a local voice training company showed up with some flyers. And I'm like, wait a minute. You know, one of the things I really missed about being mayor was using my voice to communicate, to speak to groups and on TV and radio. But I didn't want to run for office again. So I'm like, wait, I can get trained to use my voice to communicate and I'll get paid for it. And I don't have to run for office again. I'm like, I'm going to take one of these courses. And as soon as I went to my first class, I was absolutely hooked. And that was 13 years ago. And I honestly haven't looked back since. It's been an incredible journey in the margins for a long time. And as you know, Val, about a week ago, I actually sold my pharmacy, was working towards that goal to get out of doing VO and podcasting in the margins and do it full time. And through a lot of planning and over the years building up my business, I was able to, we sold the pharmacy a week ago on Friday. And so this is my first full week of just diving into VO and podcasting on a full-time basis. And I'm tired. It's been
I'm sure. Oh my gosh, that's so much stuff. Like, that's great. I didn't know you were mayor of Saratoga. That's really cool.
Yeah, I was.
Wow.
Hopefully you or your family voted for me at some point. Maybe.
I'm sure that we did. Actually, I have
that's
no idea.
That's the right answer anyway.
That's great. So you started hosting your own podcast. That's so cool. What have you learned from doing that you can share with others in the industry who might be trying to do similar things?
Yeah, it was about, I think it was sometime in 2015, because I launched my podcast on June 1st of 2015. So we're coming up on 3 years. And I remember in February, I was thinking about having a podcast, but I honestly had never listened to one. I had no idea how to make one. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to set a target date of June 1st for my launch date, and I'm going to figure it all out. And I took the next 3 months to really get through the process of coming up with a title, coming up with a logo, coming up with a format, figuring out how the heck to get it all recorded and edited and uploaded. And it was a long process that I had to go through. And as I said, I was teaching myself and learning on the internet. But I did it. I launched on June 1st. And again, we've had over 80 guests now that I've had the pleasure of interviewing, including Val Kelly. And we're going to have her on again soon. I can't wait to do that. But, you know, if you're going to get into the world of podcasting, I think there's a lot more resources available to you now than there were when I was thinking about it even 3 years ago. But I got a lot of questions about it. So I ended up creating a website. You can go to it. It's podcastsnap.com. And I formed that because a lot of people were asking me about how to create podcasts. And what I do now is part of what I do on a full-time basis is actually consult and produce and co-host other people's podcasts for them. So that's one of the things that I can provide for people. But you can go to Podcast Snap. It's not, I have my web designer creating we're going to update the site, but it is active and live. So there is information. And once I get the new site up, and now that I have more time, I'm going to be blogging about it. So there'll be more information on there as well. So it's definitely a labor of love. It's a lot of work, as you know, but a lot of fun, and you meet some great people.
It sounds like it. That's amazing. So podcast snap, like SNAP?
You got it.
.com.
Snap
Okay,
your fingers.
great.
Yeah.
Got it. I'll definitely put that in the description of our video after.
Great.
So that people can check it out. So what have been some of your biggest voiceover successes and failures for that matter?
Yeah, I I don't like to use that word failure because I talk about that on my own podcast. I'll say, what are your challenges? What were some of the hurdles, some of the obstacles? Because I don't look at things in terms of successes and failures. I try to look at every opportunity as a learning experience. And I know maybe that sounds a little cliche, but I found it to be true because anytime that I've had situations where I bumped into an obstacle, it's forced me to have to figure it out. Right. So for me, the biggest VO success is that I can, attribute to myself is just what's happened recently, is to be able to build up my client base and my work to get to the point where I'm able to kind of make that jump into full-time VO. We're all freelancers. So our last job was our last job, right? Until we get another one. So it's a leap of faith to a certain extent, but to be able to get to the point, if you asked me 13 years ago, would I be at this point where I'm able to say, hey, I'm full-time? I don't know that I would ever be able to answer that question. So it's been a long journey, but I'm very proud of that fact that I'm able to do this. So I contribute, that is my greatest success to date. And failures, I've had some setbacks along the way, but I don't like to think of them as failures at all. I just think they're obstacles to overcome for sure. And, the only thing I can really think about in terms of what one of those might have been is, right now podcasting clients, I had a client recently a potential client that I thought I was going to get, and I was close to getting it. And it didn't work out, or not right now. It didn't work out. And that, that was like, man, I really thought this was going to happen. But, you pick yourself up and dust yourself off and get going again. And that's what it's all about.
That's a great way of looking at things too, Mike, to not use the word failure. I should have reworded that in a better way of saying what are your challenges. Okay. So in the future, I'll definitely word it that way. But I think everybody, you do have to look at things in a positive manner. And so we are going to have, like you said, challenges in this industry because it is competitive, but it sounds like you're doing great. So that's really good. So what's your dream voiceover gig? If you could book anything, what would it be?
Yeah, I'd probably join a lot of other voice actors in saying that, I would love to be the voice of a brand, right? I would, most of us who are listening, watching, the voice of the Home Depot guy, right? The BMW guy and the Mercedes guy. And it's like, whenever I hear when I see those commercials, I'm like, man, I can appreciate how good they are at what they do. But to be the voice of a brand, I think would be really, really cool. The first VO gig I ever got, professional VO gig I ever got, was for a local Pontiac dealership. And I was like, wow, I got my first car, but it was a local dealership and it was Pontiac and they went out of business. It had nothing to do with my VO, by the way. But, it was a kind of a neat first voiceover job to get. But it would be really neat to do that. And I can appreciate really what the way that they brand or create the image and brand that whatever it may be, whether it's Home Depot, Lowe's, BMW, Mercedes, to be that voice would be a really neat experience. I don't know that I'm ever going to get there, but it certainly would be a lot of fun.
Well, they say to speak things into existence, right? And you just did. Right. So maybe someone watching will be like, oh my gosh, he's got the perfect voice for BMW commercials and whatever. So let's put it out there, right? Why not? Call Mike.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that be
That would be amazing.
And it could be BMW, Mercedes, really Audi, Volvo. I'm not picky.
You're not picky. You're not
No,
picky.
no.
Okay. Well,
Any one of those.
any of those companies, check out Mike's,
Give me a call.
website and give him a call.
Give me a call.
Absolutely. So what type of work do you book the most, would you say?
Definitely e-learning, corporate video work is the bulk of what I do. Audiobooks, probably a close second. I've been doing a lot more audiobooks lately. And it's funny because I enjoy the long form, because I talk to other voice actors and they're like, they don't want to have anything to do with audiobooks. I talk to other voice actors who do nothing but audiobooks. They just absolutely love it. And I kind of fall into both camps, because there are times when I really enjoy that long form, diving into a book, especially books that I would like to read anyway. But e-learning is really kind of in my sweet spot, my zone, because it's not the quick hit commercial pressure, but it's not the long form audiobooks. So I really try to focus my marketing efforts on e-learning and explainer videos to a certain extent, corporate video work. Primarily, that's what I do. And if I can get some commercial work in between, I'm happy to get it. I do those auditions all the time. And I've gotten a few commercial gigs, but that's not the bread and butter. And I think there's probably a lot of your viewers and a lot of us VO out there that I've never really aspired to do promos or trailers. I've never really aspired to be at that level. But the interesting thing, the most recent audiobook that I'm working on now is from a very good friend of mine, and it's about how to break into entertainment. It's more LA based, kind of Hollywood based, and getting into the entertainment industry. But the interesting thing that he talked about was that we all think about, when we think about LA and Hollywood, we think about the Tom Cruise and the Brad Pitts and Angelina Jolies and the super mega stars. But he said the reality is, out in LA and Hollywood, those are there's a handful of them, but there's a vast majority more of the working actor, the one that you may not necessarily know who they are, but they work every single day, and they're making a good income, and they're working at their craft every single day. Maybe not up here in the stratosphere, but they're down here, but it's consistent and it's good work. And that's important for people to know when they think about getting into VO. There's a lot of work out there for us. And I know a lot of voice actors I know some voice actors who have seen their careers escalate very quickly once they became pro VO and got in with an agency. But even those people, if you look at and you talk to them, and I've talked to over 80 of them, you find that to a person, it was a long process and a lot of work to get to that point, and it didn't happen overnight. But the reality is that there is a lot of work out there for all of us that doesn't necessarily have to be that, as I was talking about earlier, the voice of a brand or a BMW commercial. The e-learning work and the corporate video work, there's a ton of work out there, and that's really been my focus.
Yeah, I think that is really important. That voice actors, especially those starting out, or those that have been in for a little bit maybe, and that are kind of frustrated with the fact that things aren't going faster. It's a process of learning. What's your area that you're going to book the most type of work in, and are you going to be doing e-learning and audiobooks? Are those things that you enjoy, or do you have to kind of figure out where you want to be? Because I remember when I started, they tried to get me to do, a narration demo or a commercial demo, and commercial is I hardly ever book commercials,
Right.
and it's I will say it is harder with a very kind of specific type of voice to be able to book those kinds of things, because especially when my voice is more geared towards kids, it tends to be to either want to book real kids, or there's a lot of other, girls in the industry that have the higher pitched voices, and you're competing against them, and it depends on, who their agent is and all of that kind of stuff. So like you said, back to your point, is that booking whatever type of work it is consistently is more important than am I a superstar in the industry? I think that is something really important to think about.
I agree. And most people in the VO industry, as a rule, we're not aspiring to be stars because you could be walking in the grocery store next to the guy who's the voice of BMW and you'll never know it because you don't know who he is. You don't ever see his face. But so I think intuitively or in our souls, we're not necessarily VO or not out there to, see their name up in lights. We primarily we want to we want to work. And I would encourage people to, figure out which direction you want to go in, and you can try it. You can try it. So literally this afternoon before we went on, I was putting together an on-hold messaging IVR demo because the person who put the phone system in for the person who bought our pharmacy realized I was doing VO, and he said, I just did 10 installations in the last 2 weeks, and I've always been wanting to offer them that service, but I didn't know how to do it. Could you want to work with me? And I'm like, sure. I've only done a couple of on-hold messaging projects, so let me go put together a demo, put a little music underneath it, and create that, and I'll give it to you, and then you can take it to your clients and offer that as an add-on service, and then you and I can work out a deal so that, I'll make some money and you'll make some money. So here's a potential client that I had never really focused on, but somebody came to me and asked me that. So I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to take some time. I'm going to go get some copy and I'm going to create a demo. And I have VoiceAm, so I'm going to create a VoiceAm demo and I'm going to put it up on my website and I'm going to give it to this potential client. So, don't be afraid to explore new areas and try them because you don't have to do it forever, but there are so many genres out there. And the people in the VO industry, I've heard different perspectives on this, and I'm not exactly sure where I fall. Some people will say, figure it out and just dive into audiobooks and give it all you've got because you need to narrow down your niche and you need to focus on that to get better. I've heard other people say, no, do a little bit of everything because you never know what's going to come your way. And I don't know which way I fall, but I think you can concentrate on one for a little while, head down that path. And if you're not really getting the results that you wanted to, then you can tack a little bit and go down a different path and try it. But there's such variety in what we have the ability to do. And, certainly, as you were saying, sometimes you are limited by your vocal range or your style. But even within those somewhat, those restrictions, if you will, there's still a lot of options out there for VO.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think it's just a matter of, assessing your own voice and examining, how versatile can I be? What's my range? And those are, two of the initial things that a voice actor has to figure out. It's like there's lots of people that will send me messages and they're like, Val, I'm just starting out in voiceover and I want to do this, how do I get to that point? And I'm like, well, the first thing you have to do is figure out what is your vocal range and how good are your acting skills? Because that's really important, especially with character and cartoon, animation kind of stuff, which I do or aspire to do more of, and and talking toys and things like that, which are all really good. They all they fall into similar genres of voiceover because of the type of work they are. So I think that's something that people really need to figure out. So I think that I fall more into you kind of have to narrow it down a little bit and figure out these are the areas that I like. These are the areas I want to focus in. There are some people that can do a large variety of stuff. It's just you have to figure out, do you want to be one of those people or do you want to be like, this is the guy that I go to for every BMW commercial or Mercedes or whoever, you know what I mean?
Right.
But or, do you want to be the voice of every talking toy for Hasbro or whatever, and so those, I feel like if you narrow it down a little bit, even it helps you to focus on here's my goals. You've got to have some goals in this because otherwise I feel like there have been points, especially when I first started, where I was like, oh, I could do audiobooks and I could do this and I could do that, I could do that. Right. It's like, whoa, just pick one to start. That's,
Yeah.
that's it, And then, of course, they're in animation, of course, in cartoon voiceover. People will tell you, like, you have to be in LA, you have to do this, you have to do that. You have to kind of take everything that people give you as take it with a grain of salt and just go after your dreams, because you can't let everybody
No.
hold you back. That's something that I've had to learn, is that doesn't matter where you are, you have to just go for it. If you're really looking to make it happen, you have to do everything possible to drive you forward, towards
Absolutely.
reaching those goals. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? It's a little bit off, but set a goal for that far away. But do you have a goal for, or where you want to be in the industry at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's this process is kind of just unfolding for me, because we were talking about before we hit record. This has been the first week of me diving into this new uncharted territory, this new world, and it's been a crazy, crazy week. I mean, it went by so quickly because I just love doing this, and you dive into it, and all of a sudden you look up and it's 6 o'clock at night. But the so I'm kind of trying to get my sea legs, in this new
Yeah.
world, this new great new world. But the um, we have 4 children, 2 of them, one in college, one who's going to college next year. And then we've got what we call the littles. We have a 13 and a 7-year-old. But we joke about, one of my goals in transferring or transitioning out of the brick and mortar world into the freelance consulting world is is location independence. So the ability, what we do as voice actors, we can pretty much do anywhere. And that was one of my goals. So with our kids getting a little bit older, and we don't know where they're going to end up going to college, and after, we joke about how we want to get an RV and we can travel around. One of my dreams is I'm going to get an RV and we're going to retrofit it. So I'm going to have a little recording studio inside the RV, and we're just going to chase our kids around the country, and wherever they go, we're just going to be there to bug them. And that's one of my goals. And we'll see if that happens, in the next 5 years. But we've always talked about that. But, I want to just keep moving forward. And my goal in 5 years will be to continue to have the location independence that I've been working towards, and to have more clients consistently working, and doing podcasting and VO and audiobooks and having a ball. That's the plan, and that's the goal, and that's the hope.
That sounds great. I mean, it sounds like an excellent plan. So I think, just keep moving forward, and it's definitely going to work out. So
I know. I love it,
that's
man.
great.
Can you see me driving an RV, man? And wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be totally
Get out of the
awesome.
way if I get an RV. Get behind the wheel.
Get off the road. Mike's out there.
Mike's on the way. Out of the way. Oh my gosh.
So what would you say are some things that you do to stay positive in an industry that is competitive and can be really negative at times?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, but and to your point earlier, I have a friend in Syracuse who does promos, right? So that whole thing about you got to be in LA to do promos, and
Yeah.
he's doing them from Syracuse, New York. So you can do anything you want from anywhere in the VO industry, pretty much. There are some restrictions, but not as many as there used to be, and I admire those people who exclusively focus on one thing and get really good at them. The problem that I have is that I just like too much stuff in the VO world. So I'm like a kid in a candy store, and I can't help but kind of go into those things. And I think that does lend itself to some of the ways that I stay positive, is that I'm so interested in this industry from the inside out and from the outside in. So the inside out, meaning I get to interview people like you every 2 weeks. So I'm constantly getting a master class from colleagues and people that are ahead of me in their journey, and I'm learning from them, and then being able to pass that information on to my listeners, just as you are, is incredibly rewarding. And as you talk to people in the industry that we're fortunate enough to talk to on these interview-based podcasts and videos, is that you realize how amazing these people really are and how truly giving they are. So when you have that in an industry that you love, if you get an occasional rejection, or somebody doesn't like what you said, or that just washes off my back, because there's way too much good stuff happening in this industry to worry about those few things that may happen every once in a while. Look, I've got beautiful wife, 4 lovely kids. We've got 2 cats, a dog, and we had 4 chickens. Unfortunately, one of them, the hawk came and
Oh,
got her. Yeah, it's very
oh
sad. But
no.
I know it's so sad. Let's not even talk about that. That's
Gosh.
that's not positive. That's a negative. But we've got a great life, and there's very few things in my life that can cause me to get upset, and I just try to focus on the positive all the time.
Yeah, I definitely that's something that's really, really important to me is trying to stay positive. And I find myself at times, like certain times, I'll just fall into like a negative pattern, and I'm like, Val, snap out of it. Like, what is the matter with you? And I think that's just a normal, like, that's obviously just a normal existence of life and the ups and downs that go along with it, and just how you deal with them and how you cope. And so I think it is normal to have those ups and downs, but then looking and trying to always grasp there's something good is going to come out of this,
Hmm.
and I think that if you always kind of have that in the back of your mind, that whatever is happening, no matter how bad it might seem at the time, there's something good is going to come out of it eventually. So that's how I try to stay, in that positive mindset. But like I said, there are days when I'm just like,
Well,
just
it's human nature, right? I mean,
human nature, yeah.
believe me. I mean, there's plenty of mornings I wake up and like, huh, and I'd panic, like, what's happening? What am I doing? And you just you have to deal with it. I mean, my faith is important to me. Every morning I get up and I get in the book and gets me going in the morning. So for me,
Yeah,
that's what it's all about, and I try to I try to keep that focus throughout the day. But hey, we're human, and we have bad days, and we get depressed, and we get worried, and somebody says something that bothers us. I mean, that it is human nature. But as I said, from an industry perspective, uh, there's just so many wonderful people in this industry that you can lean on, that you can call upon, that you can reach out to help in any circumstance. That I just think we're blessed to be able to work in this field for sure.
definitely. So if you could, I'm sorry, I almost missed one question.
Oh
Lost
boy.
my list there. So who have you trained with and why? Like, is there anybody that you would say that you've taken coaching with, or that
Mhm.
you have really felt like they've been outstanding? Some people
Mm,
don't want to mention names, some people do. So if it's totally
yeah,
up to you if you want to do
sure.
that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I got trained 13 years ago, I that was all the training I ever got up until about 3 years ago. So, I think of my VO career in 2 segments. There was, the first 10 years and then the last 3 years. And it was really when I started my podcast and I started interviewing other voice actors. And I'm like, man, I got to step up my game because these people are just crushing it and they're so inspirational to me. And the thing that I kept hearing consistently from all of my guests was who they're training with, that you need to get trained, the importance of training. And I'm like, I haven't redone my demo in 10 years. I haven't trained anybody in 10 years. I haven't trained with anybody in 10 years. So I'm thinking, I need to step up my game. So I did. I reached out. Mark Cashman was a guest of mine. I reached out to Mark and had him on the podcast, and then ended up training with him. And then he recorded my most recent commercial demo for me, and he was a phenomenal teacher, and I learned so much from him on the commercial end. And then audiobooks with Sean Pratt. I've worked with Sean, and again, incredibly instrumental in just improving my audiobook reads, plus just my reads in general, because it really did branch out just from audiobooks. So those are the 2 guys that have been kind of my go-to guys, and I love what they've been able to help me accomplish in my career. So a great thank you to both of them. But the importance of training, I think, cannot be overemphasized. No matter what your budget is, even if it's zero, you need to train yourself. If all you can do is go on and find copy on Edge Studios and get copy to read, practice, then you got to do it, because that's the only way that we're going to get better. And I've used this analogy many times, and other people have as well. Serena Williams, let's use her for an example, one of the greatest tennis players, arguably the greatest female tennis player of all time. she has a coach, right? She never stopped coaching, even when she started winning all of these major tournaments. All the great athletes have coaches, right? So in our industry, it's so important for us to continue to hone our skills that training, I've become a new believer in the reality of the necessity of training with somebody, not necessarily all the time, because that can get expensive, but make sure that every once in a while you're reaching back out there and reaching out to some coaches and honing your skills, because it makes a huge difference in terms of the quality of your performance.
Absolutely. I think you're exactly right. I mean, there are so many great coaches out there, and it's just, I think sometimes you actually have to work with a bunch of different people before you find out who you get along with, you're going to know, like, almost immediately, I think, if you click with that person or not. You know, if you like their style, if they have the personality that's going to, make you feel good about your work, instead of, every coach takes it in a different way. You know what I mean? Their approach to getting out of you what they want to get out of you is different for each one of them. And I've worked with a lot of different coaches, and I have to say that, there are very few that I didn't, go back to. But I would say that, yeah, initially when I first started, I definitely went through a handful of coaches before I decided, like, this is who I really want to work with, and these are other coaches that I aspire to work with, so I think it's just a personal preference as to who you choose, and it's important to try out different people, because I think everyone has something different to offer. So that's really good.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So if you could meet anyone in the voiceover industry that you haven't met yet, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a hard one for me, because there are definitely VO talent that I would love the opportunity to meet, that I don't know that I'll ever be able to meet them. But it doesn't mean that I won't be able to at some point. Rodney Salisbury was at the top of my list, and he's somebody that I've already met, because I've had him on as a podcast guest twice. But I want to tell this story because it's important. Is that to me, his influence on me has been very important. I remember when I was starting my VO podcast, I was trying to figure out who I was going to interview, and I thought, well, who's the most famous voice actor that I know of? And it was Rodney. And so I sent him a cold email, said, I'm starting a podcast, and I'm wondering if you might be interested in being a guest. And I hit the send button, I said a prayer, and off it went. And this was 3:00 in the afternoon. I was at the pharmacy. I come home at 6:00, say hi to the family. And my phone rings, and I look at the phone, and it says near Beverly Hills, California. And I'm like, no. I pick up the phone. I'm going to go, hello. And I'll do my best Rodney Salisbury impersonation, but and I won't do it justice. I hear on the other end of it, hello, this is Rodney Salisbury. Is Mike Lenz there? And I'm like, I'm holding the phone out like this.
You're like mute while I scream into the phone.
Right? I'm like, ah. I'm like, oh, hi, this is Mike. And I'm like, ah. He goes, hi, Mike, this is Rodney. I got your email. Let's talk. And we ended up talking about, I had self-published a book about the voiceover industry, and he wanted to ask me about how I self-published my book. We spent an hour talking about self-publishing books and struck up a friendship. Ultimately, he became one of my first initial guests, and we probably talk easily once a month, if not once every couple of weeks. We've become friends. We bounce ideas off of one another. He will just call me out of the blue. I'll call him randomly, and we chat. And I'm not saying that to name drop. I'm saying that that this industry is that way.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who I didn't even have any street cred. I didn't even have any guests yet. And I sent him an email, a cold email, and he called me. He called me on the phone. Who does that? Right? Who does that? So for me, it was literally like, pick your most famous Hollywood actor, and they called you on the phone when you sent them an email. That was what Rodney was to me. And so I'll always greatly appreciate the fact that he was willing to do that for me. So he was the guy, and I met him. So I can die a happy man.
That's
Rodney and
awesome.
I have met, we're friends, and I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
But the opportunity, like we said, what you and I do is we have the opportunity to meet amazing VO actors. Every single one of the people guests that I have had on my podcast, I have learned immensely from, and I am proud and happy to call them my friend. So for me to be able to continually gain friendships and gain knowledge and be able to give that back out to the people that listen, it doesn't get any better than that. And like I said, there are certainly big time voice actors that if I ever got the chance to meet them, I would love to. Certainly the guys from SpongeBob SquarePants come to the top of my list, and
Yeah.
those kind of guys who are just amazingly talented people. But I'm okay with all my friends and all the other people I get to interview for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure everybody would love to be on your show. So, I mean, put it out there and
Yeah.
see what happens, right?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'll have the voice of SpongeBob on my
That would be amazing.
on my podcast at some point.
Cool. So what are some upcoming trainings or workshops or conferences that you're planning to attend, and why?
Well, I'm going to try to get to MAF. The FAFCon experience was amazing. It was the only conference I've ever been to. So
Mhm.
for me, that's my only basis of comparison. So having been to FAFCon 9, the experience was incredible, and I'm definitely going to try to get. I'm sad that it's not going to be in 2018. It's going to be in 2019. Like they're going to push it out.
Right.
But that'll be the last FAFCon. So that will be the one that I will definitely be attending. And like I said, I've never attended any others. So that was the one and only. But the experience I had was amazing, and I know that you get that kind of experience at your conference. And as we talked about when we had coffee, the wonderful thing about your conference is that you want to limit it to the number of people that you can attend, and FAFCon does the same thing, where you're allowed to have that intimacy and really be able to bond with the people that you're there with, versus some bigger conferences where you kind of feel like you're lost at sea and it can be a little disconcerting, and you kind of come back from them. And I've heard people say that, they're like, what just happened? Because
Yeah.
I don't know what I just experienced, but I'm not sure I liked it, but whereas these smaller and more intimate conferences allow you to really bond with the people that you're there with and with the presenters. So conferences like yours are definitely at the top of my list in terms of being able to attend, for sure.
Yeah, well, we would definitely love to have you there,
I
of
know it would
course.
be wonderful. It would be
Wonderful.
wonderful.
So just to throw that in right now, Mid-Atlantic
Yes.
Voiceover taking place on November 9 through 11 in Herndon, Virginia. And our keynote speaker is Kari Walgren. Fantastic. And we
Yes.
also have, our lineup of guest speakers is amazing, but just to highlight a few, we have Sarah Jane Sherman is returning, and this time she'll be offering a children's program, which is something we've never done before. She'll be offering a half-day children's program on that Sunday, November 11th. So there will be 12 spots open for children voice actors who want to have a cartoon voiceover experience with Sarah. So that will be something that we're kind of highlighting and really looking forward to, and hopefully we'll be able to get 12 kids in there to train with her, which I'm plotting to pretend I'm a kid so that I can get into that session. But,
Smart.
shh, don't tell Sarah.
No, I won't.
But so, yeah, we have so many great people. Mark Scott is going to be there, and Johnny Heller, and Tom Deere, and Gabby Nistico, and like the list just goes on and on. Celia Siegel, Sunday Muse. It's outstanding. So we would definitely love to see you there if you can make it. And tell us your website so that everyone can go check it out and book you for future voiceover work, and also check out your podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Mike Lenz Voice is the place to go. So MikeLenzVoice.com. So MikeLenz voice.com. So it's a newly updated website. So what's nice is you can go there and it'll take you everywhere. So I kind of wanted to consolidate things. So once you get to Mike Lenz Voice, there'll be links to get you to the podcast and to Podcast Snap and my VO course. So you can get all those places, all things Mike Lenz Voice at MikeLenzVoice.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Mike. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. Everyone, go and check out Mike's website at mikelenzvoice.com, and I'll put the link in the description below this video. Everyone have a fantastic night. And Mike, we wish you the most success in the future, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Val, and thank you for having me on. I know firsthand how hard these things are to do, and you're doing an awesome job, so keep it up.
Thanks so much.